Chosen one, listen carefully. Do not skip this message, because something is happening, and it has been happening since the very beginning of your life. You didn't just stumble into this video. You were led here, and deep down, you already feel it, that quiet, persistent feeling that says, "There's something different about me." Something you couldn't explain as a child. Something people around you never fully understood. Something that made you feel set apart. Chosen one. What if I told you you were marked, not recently, not after your struggles, but since childhood? Before the confusion, before the pain, before the rejection, there was a mark. And it never left you. Stay with me, because what you're about to understand will change how you see your entire life. There's a reason your journey has felt heavier than others. A reason you've felt things more deeply. A reason you've questioned everything, while others just followed. You've gone through moments where you felt alone, misunderstood, even forgotten. You've asked, why is my life like this? Why do I feel so different? Why do I carry so much when no one else seems to? But listen carefully. You were never being punished. You were being prepared. Do not skip this, because the truth is, something unseen has always been guiding you, even when it didn't feel like it. Even when everything around you looked like chaos, there was a hidden order, even in your childhood, even in your silence, even in your pain. Hold on until the end, because once you see these signs, you will never doubt your purpose again. Think back to when you were younger, before the world told you who to be, before people tried to shape you into something else. There were signs, small but powerful. Moments you didn't understand then, but now they start to make sense. You felt things deeply, more than others. While others laughed, you noticed the sadness behind people's smiles. While others played, you were thinking, observing, feeling something beyond the surface. And sometimes you felt like you didn't belong anywhere, not fully, not completely. Even among friends, even in your own home, there was always this quiet distance, like your soul knew. This is not all there is. Chosen one, that wasn't rejection. That was separation for a purpose, because those who are marked can't fully attach to what they're meant to rise above. And let's be honest, your path hasn't been easy. You've faced things early in life, confusion, emotional pain, situations that forced you to grow faster than others. You didn't get to stay carefree for long. Something pulled you into awareness, into depth, into questioning, and while others saw it as a burden, it was actually a signal, a quiet whisper saying, you are being shaped. There were times you tried to fit in. You tried to be like everyone else. You tried to silence that inner voice, but it never worked, did it? Because no matter how hard you tried, you always came back to yourself, that deeper self, that aware self, that different self. Chosen one, that's because your identity was never meant to be borrowed. It was given. And it has been protected since the very beginning. Chosen one, listen carefully. Do not scroll past this, because something is happening inside you right now, something you've felt your entire life, but never fully understood. You felt different, long before you had the words to explain it. As a child, you couldn't quite fit into the spaces everyone else seemed comfortable in. You tried. You really did. You laughed when others laughed. You followed when others led. But deep down, there was always this quiet voice whispering, "This isn't you," and that confused you, because from the outside, nothing looked wrong. But on the inside, you felt out of place, like you were present, but not fully connected, like you were part of the world, but not completely shaped by it. My beloved child, that feeling was never a mistake. Do not skip this, because what you thought was isolation was actually awareness. While others were moving without thinking, you were noticing. While others accepted everything as it was, you questioned, not because you were difficult, but because your spirit refused to settle for what wasn't true. And that made you feel alone, didn't it? There were moments where you looked around and wondered, why am I like this? Why can't I just be normal? Why do I feel things so deeply when others don't seem to care? You carried emotions you couldn't explain. You sensed tension in rooms before anyone spoke. You felt the weight of things that others ignored, and no one taught you that. You didn't learn it. It was already in you. Pause for a moment and think back. There were times you preferred silence over noise, depth over distraction, truth over comfort, even as a child. While others were chasing attention, you were searching for meaning. While others were satisfied with surface-level connections, you longed for something real, something deeper, something that made sense to your soul. But instead of understanding that, you questioned yourself. You thought something was wrong with you. You tried to adjust, to shrink, to blend in. But no matter how much you tried, you couldn't escape that feeling, that inner knowing, that quiet difference, that unexplainable pull. Chosen one. That wasn't confusion. That was recognition. Your spirit recognized something before your mind could comprehend it. That's why you never fully fit into environments that lacked depth. That's why certain conversations drained you, while others felt empty, because you were never designed for shallow living. You were created to feel, to discern, to see beyond what's visible. But understand this, awareness often comes with loneliness, because when you see differently, you walk differently. And when you walk differently, not everyone understands your path. That's why you felt alone in rooms full of people. That's why, even surrounded by others, you sometimes felt unseen. But listen carefully. You were never alone. You were set apart. There's a difference. Being alone feels like abandonment, but being set apart is preparation. Something was shaping you, even then. Through your sensitivity, through your questions, through your quiet moments of reflection, you were being trained to listen, not just to the world, but to something deeper. And even though you didn't understand it at the time, that difference you felt was protection, because had you blended in completely, you might have lost that inner voice, that awareness, that truth, but you didn't. It stayed with you through every phase, through every doubt, through every moment you tried to ignore it. It never left. And now, something is shifting. You're starting to realize that what you once saw as a burden was actually a gift. That feeling of being different was not rejection, it was direction. You were being guided, even before you knew what guidance looked like. My beloved child, you were never behind. You were never strange. You were never too much. You were early. Early in awareness, early in depth, early in understanding things others are still trying to grasp. And yes, it came with confusion. It came with loneliness. But it also came with something powerful. Clarity, the kind that doesn't come from the outside, but rises from within. So don't run from it anymore. Don't silence it. Don't try to become someone you're not just to feel accepted. Because the very thing that made you feel different is the very thing that sets you apart for something greater. And deep down, you've always known that. You just needed someone to remind you. So if this speaks to your spirit, If something inside you is quietly saying, "This is me," then don't ignore it. Sit with it, accept it, because you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to awaken. And this feeling you've carried since childhood was the beginning of that awakening. Chosen one, listen carefully. Do not skip this, because what you're about to hear may finally explain the weight you've been carrying for so long. Your pain, it didn't start yesterday. It didn't begin when you became an adult. It came early, before you were ready, before you had the strength to understand it. And that confused you. Because while others were living carefree, laughing without worry, you were already learning lessons life usually teaches much later. You were feeling things deeply, too deeply for your age. My beloved child, there were moments you didn't even have the words for what you felt. Only silence, only heaviness, only questions. Why is this happening to me? Why does it hurt this much? Why do I feel so alone, even when people are around, and no one could fully answer you? Some didn't notice, some didn't understand, and some simply couldn't carry what you were carrying, so you learned to hold it in. You learned to be strong too early. Pause for a moment and go back there. That younger version of you, trying to make sense of pain that didn't make sense, trying to stay soft in situations that forced you to harden, trying to trust while experiencing things that broke that trust. You didn't choose that path, but it chose you. And listen carefully. This is where most people misunderstand your story. They see your strength now, but they don't see where it was born. It was born in those quiet battles, in those nights where you felt unseen, in those moments where you had to grow, without guidance. Your pain was not light, it was not small, it was real. And it left marks. But those marks, they didn't just wound you, they shaped you. Do not skip this, because something is shifting in your understanding right now. What if your early pain wasn't meant to destroy you, but to develop something within you that couldn't be taught any other way? Think about it. Because of what you went through, you see people differently now. You recognize pain in others, without them saying a word. You carry empathy, not as an idea, but as an experience. You don't just hear people, you feel them. And that didn't come from comfort. It came from survival, from endurance, from walking through things you never talk about. Chosen one, you became strong, not because you wanted to, but because you had to. And that strength, it's different, it's quiet. It doesn't need validation because it was built in the dark, where no one was watching. But let's be honest, that strength came with a cost, didn't it? There are parts of you that still feel tired, parts that still remember, still carry, still ache. There are moments when the past tries to speak again, and you wonder, am I truly healed, or just used to the pain? Listen carefully. You are not broken. You are layered. There's a difference. Your story didn't end in those painful moments. It was being written. Every tear, every confusion, every time you felt like giving up but didn't. It was shaping something deeper inside you, something resilient, something aware, something unshakable. And now, you're beginning to see it, that the pain you once questioned is now part of your strength, that the things that tried to crush you actually refined you. But here's the truth most people won't tell you. Early pain changes you. It does. It makes you cautious. It makes you observant. It makes you think twice, where others move freely. And sometimes it makes you feel like you missed out on something. A softer life, a simpler path. But my beloved child, you didn't miss out. You were entrusted. Entrusted with depth, with awareness, with the ability to see what others overlook, because you've lived it, you've felt it, you've survived it, and now something is happening. You're no longer just carrying the pain, you're understanding it. You're no longer just remembering the past, you're learning from it, and that changes everything. Because once pain becomes understanding, it loses its power to control you. You begin to walk differently, not as someone broken, but as someone rebuilt. So don't rush your healing. Don't compare your journey, and don't minimize what you've been through. Because that early pain, it didn't make you weak. It made you aware. It made you resilient. It made you who you are becoming, and you're still becoming. So, if this resonates with you, if you feel that quiet truth settling in your heart, then don't ignore it. Sit with it. Acknowledge it, because your story didn't begin with strength, but it's being shaped by it. And everything you went through is not the end of you. It's the making of you. Chosen one, listen carefully. Do not skip this, because what you're feeling right now is not random. Something has always been pulling you. Something deeper. Something most people never stop to notice. From a young age, you weren't satisfied with surface-level answers. You didn't just accept things because that's how they are. You questioned, quietly, but deeply, my beloved child. While others were comfortable with appearances, you were searching for meaning, while others followed the crowd. You felt an inner resistance, not rebellion, but discernment. You wanted to know what was real, not what looked real, not what sounded good, but what was true, and that made your journey different. Do not skip this, because this part of you has been misunderstood for too long. There were moments when people told you to stop overthinking, to just go with the flow, to not take things so seriously. But they didn't understand. You weren't overthinking, you were seeing. You were sensing when something didn't align. You were noticing the gaps between words and actions. You were feeling when something lacked depth. And that created distance, didn't it? Because when you seek truth, you can't fully connect with what feels false, even if everyone else accepts it, even if it's popular, even if it's easy. Pause for a moment and reflect. How many times did you sit in conversations, nodding on the outside, but questioning everything on the inside? How many times did you walk away, feeling like something was missing, like the connection wasn't real, like the moment was empty, even though it looked full? Chosen one, that wasn't you being difficult, that was you being aware. You were never meant to live on the surface. Your spirit rejected it, even when your mind tried to accept it. That's why you felt pulled toward deeper conversations, meaningful connections, moments of silence where truth can actually be felt. You've always wanted something real, something honest, something that doesn't shift depending on the crowd. But let's be honest, that search hasn't been easy, because truth is not always comfortable, and seeking it often means walking alone. There were seasons where you felt disconnected from people around you, not because you didn't care, but because you couldn't pretend. You couldn't fake interest in what felt empty. You couldn't ignore what your spirit was telling you, so you stayed quiet. You observed. You waited. And sometimes you felt lonely. Listen carefully, because this is where everything begins to shift. That hunger for truth inside you. It's not accidental. It's not something you developed over time. It was placed within you, a compass, a guide, something that keeps pulling you back whenever you drift too far from what's real. Even when you tried to ignore it, even when you tried to fit in, even when you told yourself, Maybe I'm thinking too much. That inner pull never left. It kept whispering, there's more. There's something deeper. Keep searching. And now, you're starting to understand it. That your desire for truth was never a flaw. It was direction. It was protection. Because without it, you could have easily settled for less, for illusions, for temporary things that feel good but lack substance. But you didn't. You couldn't. Because your spirit wouldn't allow it. My beloved child, you were designed to see beyond appearances, to feel beyond words, to recognize what others overlook. And yes, that makes your path harder, but it also makes it clearer, because when you walk in truth, you may lose what's not real, but you gain what actually matters. Something is happening right now. You're no longer questioning why you're like this. You're beginning to accept it, to embrace it, to trust that inner voice, instead of silencing it. And that changes everything, because once you trust that pull, you stop chasing empty things. You stop forcing connections. You stop settling. You start aligning. You start choosing what feels true, even if it's not easy, even if it's not popular, even if it means standing alone for a while. Chosen one. You were never meant to follow blindly. You were meant to see clearly, and that clarity, it's growing. So don't fight it anymore. Don't shrink it. Don't ignore it just to feel accepted. Because the very thing that sets you apart is the very thing guiding you forward. And deep down, you've always known that. So if this speaks to your spirit, if something inside you feels seen, then sit with it, acknowledge it, because your search for truth is not leading you away from life. It's leading you into the real version of it. And you're closer than you think. Chosen one, listen carefully. Do not skip this, because what felt like rejection in your life was never just rejection. It was redirection. I know that's hard to accept, because when it happened, it didn't feel purposeful. It felt personal.